What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats as well as some excellent attachment combinations for every gun in Modern Warfare 3. And in today's episode, we're going to quickly dip into the battle rifle category to cover the BAS-B. And starting it off as always, let's have a look at our damage profile, and just like with battle rifles in Modern Warfare 2, we do have a different damage profile for full auto versus semi-auto mode. So let's start it off with full auto, and with this gun, it's generally going to be a 4 to 5 shot kill, although it technically could be a 6 shot kill in the minimum damage range if you're hitting a bunch of leg shots, but realistically speaking, that's almost never going to happen, so it's going to be a 4 to 5 shot kill. However, if we manage to hit 2 headshots mixed in with a body shot in the maximum damage range, we can get a 3 shot kill with this gun in full auto. Then let's have a look at our rate of fire, again in full auto mode. We'll look at semi-auto in just a bit. With this gun, we have a rate of fire of 667 rounds per minute, and what this means is we have an amazing time to kill potential to the body at 270 milliseconds with a 4 shot kill, and this is actually quite competitive with SMGs at point blank range. Additionally, if we manage to mix those 2 headshots in with a body shot up close for a 3 shot kill, our headshot time to kill potential is just 180 milliseconds, which is extremely fast for this game. So in full auto mode, we can already tell this gun has a ton of power, which I'm sure many of you guys are already aware of. Now let's have a look at semi-auto. And what they've done here with semi-auto is a little bit strange. Normally with battle rifles, you get a flat damage boost when you swap it over to semi-auto mode. Even though that realistically doesn't make sense, for gameplay balance, I get why they do it. However, with the BAS-B, when you switch it to semi-auto, now you get the leg damage everywhere in the body. So it's actually a nerf to your damage across the board. You would be dealing more damage to the torso in full auto than semi-auto. And honestly, this makes absolutely no sense. I think this is currently bugged at the moment, and therefore I'd highly recommend staying away from semi-auto with this gun. However, I do want to point out at least our headshot damage values are significantly boosted, and we actually can get a 2-shot kill to the head in semi-auto mode with the BAS-B. Now, is that worth swapping over to semi-auto mode and dealing less damage to the body? No, generally not. I wouldn't recommend it at the moment. This is something I suspect they may adjust in the future. But now let's move into our rate of fire in semi-auto mode. And as far as I can tell with my hand testing, this is about 522 rounds per minute, which is very respectable for a semi-auto gun. However, it's still noticeably slower than when firing in full auto, and since we're killing in the same number of shots, that gives us a very noticeably slower time to kill at 345 milliseconds for our 4-shot kill. Now, in saying that, if you manage to get that 2-shot kill to the head, we get a ridiculous time to kill potential at 115 milliseconds, but that's really the only benefit to using this in semi-auto, and I think the risk of not getting a 2-shot kill to the head is too high to really justify this use. So that covers it for the damage values. Now let's move into ranges, and as we can see here, we actually get the same range drop-offs whether it's in full auto or semi-auto, but in semi-auto, we are dealing less damage since we're dealing leg damage everywhere. Also, it is worth noting we get an amazing bullet velocity at 790 meters per second. This should never be a problem for you within these 6v6 maps. And just comparing this to the other Modern Warfare 3 battle rifles when it comes to ranges, our maximum damage range with the BAS-B is actually the best in the category here. The other ones drop off at 19 meters. This drops off at about 36 meters. And then finally for ranges, let's have a look at hardcore game modes. And as we can see here, you definitely want to keep it in full auto so you don't deal that 29 damage everywhere in the body in the minimum damage range, which would mean a 2-shot kill. But as long as you do keep it in full auto and you aren't hitting leg shots, this will be a 1-shot kill at any range. As for Hipfire, we're basically bang on average for the Modern Warfare 3 battle rifles in this game. The Hipfire spread while standing still is actually very good. It's better than assault rifles at 2.3 degrees per second. Whereas our maximum Hipfire spread while moving is noticeably higher than most of the assault rifles. Then let's have a look at our recoil, and we're going to start this off with our full auto recoil, and as you can see here, this is a very accurate gun. It does kick in a nice straight line, although it's a diagonal line to the right, so you do have to compensate a little bit for that horizontal recoil, but it's not like this is bouncing all over the place or jumping much from shot to shot. Whereas when you put this in semi-auto mode, even though you're getting a slower fire rate, and you're actually dealing less damage, we get more recoil in semi-auto mode. I was very surprised to see this. Typically, switching to semi-auto is going to give you a more accurate gun, especially if you're getting a slower fire rate, but that's not the case with the BAS-B. So this is yet another point against semi-auto. Just stay far away from it, for now at least, with the BAS-B. As for our handling stats, our aim down sight time is pretty solid at 260 milliseconds. Whereas our sprint to fire time is the same as the other Modern Warfare 3 battle rifles at 231 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time and 350 milliseconds for our tactical sprint out time. And while this is average for battle rifles, it is worth noting this is fairly slow. This is something you really have to actively think about while playing the game or building your class setups. And then finally for our handling stats, our reload add time is 1.77 seconds, which is a bit on the slower side. And as a result, I often either like using a larger magazine on this so I don't have to reload as often, or I like combining this with mag holster for a slightly faster reload. And then finally, for the base stats of this gun, let's get into our mobility stats. And when it comes to our base movement speed and our sprint movement speed, these are the same for all of the Modern Warfare 3 battle rifles at 4.6 meters per second and 5.5 meters per second respectively. Whereas when it comes to our aim walking movement speed, we actually have the best in the category at 2.9 meters per second. That's pretty solid for a battle rifle. And with that, it's finally time to get into some excellent attachment combinations with the BAS-B, and the first one I'm going to share is my accuracy build. And with this one, we have the TY LRB muzzle. This one primarily helps with horizontal recoil control to correct that diagonal lean to the right. We've got the Bruin Venom long barrel, the 1 milliwatt PEC laser, since idle sway is something you'll really notice with this gun if you don't account for that, and this laser attachment is excellent because you can't see this laser. We also have the Mark III reflector, just my preferred optic, and then finally the Ravage 20 heavy stock. Now with this particular setup, it might not look like an accuracy build if you look at the total magnitude of recoil. Technically, it's kicking up a little bit higher than the base recoil. However, we've basically eliminated that horizontal recoil, and there's also a noticeable reduction to the gaps between shots, especially with those first few shots fired. And therefore, when you actually get this in your hands, it does feel very noticeably more accurate than the base version of this gun. Now with this setup, we do get a bit of a slower aim down sight speed at 300 milliseconds. If you're hanging back at longer ranges, this is still a perfectly fine aim down sight speed, and also our sprint out time is even worse than the base, so this isn't the type of setup you typically want to be rushing around the map with. In saying that, we do get a 20% boost to our ranges, which is excellent. That's a very big boost. And also, our bullet velocity is even better than before, so this gun's going to feel like hit scan, even at fairly long ranges. As for the next setup I wanted to share for you guys, this one's much more of a balanced build. It's my balanced stealth build because you're also staying off the radar. And with this, we're using the Crippling Malice barrel, which does have an integrated suppressor, so we're staying off the radar. We're once again using the Mark III reflector. We've got the Bruin Minuteman stock, the STT-88 grip, and then finally we're topping this off with a 30-round mag, which just makes us a whole lot more versatile, especially if you're pushing in toward the enemy spawn. You can get more kills in a single magazine. Now with this setup, our recoil is pretty solid. Even though the magnitude looks way higher, keep in mind we're firing 30 rounds rather than 20. Generally, you should still be able to pick people off at fairly long ranges just fine with this gun. Our aim down sight speed is improved a little bit at 250 milliseconds. Our sprint out time is also improved a little bit, so it's more like an assault rifle. However, unfortunately, we lose 20% to our ranges. I think this gun can definitely afford that. I don't think it's that big of a deal, especially since with this setup, I'm usually moving around the map and trying to get a little bit more into those like close to mid-range engagements. And honestly, this is actually my preferred build with the BAS-B. This is the one I'm going to be using 9 times out of 10. I really enjoy this one. It's super versatile, has an amazing time to kill, and just good balanced stats overall. Now let's finally move into much more of a niche build. This is just for you guys that like using tac stance in the game. And with this, we're once again using the same barrel that has the integrated suppressor, that Crippling Malice barrel. We've got the Stovall DR laser box, the Bruin Flash V8 stock, the Tourney Tac grip, and then finally a 45-round mag so we can spray a little bit with this. And as we can see, our tac stance spread, especially while firing, is significantly better than our base tac stance spread. Our aim down sight speed is slower, but that's not really as much of a factor when you're using tac stance. Our sprint out time is very noticeably better. And while we do get a 20% reduction to our range, you're not going to be using this type of build at long range anyway. And once again, we are staying off the radar. So if you like using tac stance, this is a great way to go. And with that, that's going to wrap it up today's gun guide on the BAS-B. As for my thoughts on this gun, I do think it is currently the best gun in the entire game, especially after the nerfs to the DG and the Holger 5.56. It's just so incredibly consistent, has an incredible base time to kill just with body shots even. It's very accurate and just easy to use overall. Now, of course, you want to make sure you keep it out of semi-auto though. Again, I don't know if that is a bug. I assume it is, and I suspect they will get on top of that at some point. Just a reminder, I am going to be leaving a link to a playlist in the description of every one of my gun guides, and anytime there's any weapon balancing that happens, I will be putting that video where I cover that weapon balancing in great detail into that playlist so you guys can check that out for yourselves. Now, of course, I am curious to hear from you guys though. What are you thinking about the BAS-B so far? Do you agree with me? Do you think this is probably the best gun in the entire game at the moment? Or do you disagree? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.